First things first is who here is motivated by money? Show of hands. Come on, show of hands. That's the alarming about statistical rate of how many of you will not succeed as your own successful entrepreneur. It's a no, seriously, it's a veil that blinds all of us, and it will distract you so bad. Because in pop culture and media, we're constantly seeing people with wealth displaying, you're like, oh, I want to be that person. And that's the worst, the worst thing you could possibly do is be distracted by the money. One thing that I've learned that's really important, not just about Silicon Valley, but about entrepreneurship in general, is that there's, in my opinion, there's two types of entrepreneurs. There's entrepreneurs who start a business to start a business, who just go out to do it to make money. Stanford people. So anyways, and then there's the other kind of person who just randomly develops a product, or they want to improve something or make somebody's life better in some way, and they develop a product or service and then realize that they can monetize on that, and then it develops into a business. And that doesn't mean you won't be successful, but there's a lot of businesses out there that are just crap. They just do businesses just to be a business, and they have no specialty, no secret sauce, nothing sexy about them. So anyways, those are I think some of the most important characteristics I've learned about how to divide certain entrepreneurs. Are definitely those two. I think another thing that's really important about being an entrepreneur is the sacrifice. You have to take major risks. I sold everything to fund this company that I have now. I gave up so much. These shoes, literally, here are the first shoes I bought for 3 years because I've spent so much money, just focused of my own on all these companies and trying to develop something. So, you have to be able to really give up your safety blanket, whether it's your job or maybe even your social life. I think that's really big too. It is, what's more important to you? Being Mr. or Mrs. Cool and having a really good, active social life, or getting shit done. So you have to sacrifice a lot, and I think a huge part of it is time and money. A lot of time goes into it. Be prepared to sleep on the floor. Be prepared to get 5 hours of sleep each night, and just enjoy it and live with it. So I think that's really important, is the sacrifices that you have to give up, because anybody, and I see this a lot too, because we have offices at WeWork. I won't name any names, but there's a lot of startups in there that got this 9 to 5 shit that doesn't work. You have to be there all the time. I'm there literally from 10 until like midnight or 2 in the morning or something like that. And there's a couple other people that are that late too, but the majority of people try to mold it into this really comfortable, setting. That's just not the way it works. But anyways, they'll learn. So the other thing you really got to have when you start your own company is you've got to have thick skin. There's going to be a ton of naysayers. It usually kind of, unfortunately, starts with your family. Okay, usually those are the first doubters. Then you have your friends and your peers, and you need to understand that there's two types of criticisms. There's constructive criticisms, and then there's criticisms that are just, have no merit, and they're just stupid, ignorant, criticisms. And you need to know how to separate those. For instance, when we first started this company, it kind of developed as an app, and one of the people that I had interviewed that I wanted to bring on the team, Matt Crockstown, I hope I'm saying his last name right, really smart guy, and he told me, he's like, Brandon, it's just not cool. I thought, wait, they're doing all these strategies and all these logistics, and I never thought about that. It's just not cool. And he explained why. And so I thought to myself, wow, that really kind of changed things. And you have to understand that constructive criticisms are actually what shape your business model. They shape your product. They evolve your product. And it's really important to kind of take those constructive criticisms and use them for you instead of against you. And then there's just straight up just hater stuff where people are just have nothing better to do, and you just got to get over it. Like it's gonna come. There's no way to avoid that. I think that's actually probably like a really good segue into building a team. Having thick skin is very important because when you're in the interview process, when you're trying to develop a team and build a team to have people come in and help you, a lot of those people will talk shit. They will tell you, oh, it can't be done. Or they will tell you that it's a silly idea or you don't know what you're doing. I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I've had some very funny people tell me, I've had people call me an idiot, I've had people tell me it'll never work, it'll never happen, and well, we did. So anyways, you kind of got to have thick skin for stuff like that, and when you're speaking with these people, you got to understand that these linguistical skills are very important when you're speaking with people, and how to negotiate when you're bringing these people on, because they will have some of these doubts. And if you've never worked in groups of teams before with a company, it may be a little bit of a learning curve to kind of really vet out some of these candidates. But you need to be able to kind of shut them down in front, like, no, we did all this research, this is why that is the way it looks to you, and this is how we overcame that. And then they kind of turn around and they're like, wait, yeah. So the guy we have on our team now, we kind of did that. He was really, really doubtful, for instance, of the boxes, because we wanted to make sure we had really nice boxes. And then we went to a pitch and realized, wow, we really need these boxes to look really fancy, as if we just pulled them right off the assembly line. And even though it's not a technology, it's still kind of important altogether that you really try to negotiate these things with people and try to convince them that what you're doing is right. Otherwise, you'll lose that person. And they may be very skillful and very networked, which is very important. You have to learn how to filter out the BS. If they're a young candidate, it's kind of hard to filter out the BS because they don't have much of a track record. But with older people, me personally, I don't really do my due diligence on any new candidate, which I know a lot of people may think that's not a good idea, but I usually like to do an intro first and base off my gut instinct off of what I feel off of them. And if something doesn't feel right, then I'll go back and I'll do my due diligence and I'll make my decision. But usually I don't give everybody a chance because I think that's just the way it should be. But anyway, so another thing that is important are red flags. When you bring on board somebody and they want paperwork, they want a certain equity amount, they want all these incentives and this and that, and they want their employee contract agreement to be this specific, run away. Do not have those people. They're institutionalized by corporate America, basically, and that's how it is there, where everything's in fine detail. With a startup, you wear many hats, and everybody does certain things, and you never know that programmer might actually know a ton of VCs, and you're actually fundraising, and now you just threw a software programmer into a VC pitch because of his networks, and that totally wasn't what you brought him on for, and he's now helping the company in other capacities. So it's very important to look out for people who are kind of anal like that. You don't want to work with those kind of people usually. So another thing that's important, that's really awkward is I think for any entrepreneur is the terms. What agreement you work out with that employee, whether it's salary or whether it's equity. It's always awkward, I think, for both people because nobody wants to really ask. A lot of people have trouble really asking for a certain amount of equity, and you can't be greedy. Don't be greedy, but you kind of have to balance out the workload for what you have, and you kind of have to find that balance. I know if you talk to any of our attorneys, they'll tell you, oh my God, 1%. They freak out over any little equity amount. But to me, I'm like, but he's very important or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So that's really important, to not be greedy, but try to be as open as possible. And you never know too, because there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of people come and go. So don't really take it super seriously. At the end of the day, it's better to have to give them a lot and have a lot than be greedy and have nothing. So you need to take that into consideration. Another segue, and I'm trying to talk about negotiating as much as possible, is fundraising. A lot of you, you probably already know this, but where do you get money? A lot of people are like, these guys get all these money. Like Joe Schmo just raised $14 million for a carpet hair counter. Like, why are these people getting all this money for like the stupidest stuff? It's crazy. So anyways, don't go to banks. Banks are the reason this whole country is messed up. Do not give them money. I'm sorry, I hope nobody in here is pitching banks. Banks are bad. Don't go to banks. Go to investors. In the last 2 years, crowdfunding became legal, which is really cool. So if you actually have like a tangible product, you can crowdfund for it. Be aware though, I have experience, it's very stressful. So I had one investor, I got 142 of them to report to each month. Kind of the reason we're filming too. So you got to update everybody and let them know kind of what you're doing. But it's very cool because you don't need to release any equity. So that's really cool too. You kind of let the people vote for it. But as far as investing goes, where to get it, it's kind of really hard to look for it. It's a really weird process because if you ask for it, everybody will turn you down. You kind of need to sneak your way into their network and really befriend somebody or get connected to an investor, because if you just outright ask them, the chance of you getting money from them is just like 99.9%. You just won't get it. It's just like, for guys who may know this, it's a lot like approaching a lady. They always have their guard up, right? And you kind of got to befriend them and get to know them a little bit, and then they kind of lower their guard and they're nice to you, and you guys have a nice conversation. Investors are the same way. You kind of have to lower, their guard a little bit by doing an intro. That's usually kind of the best way. Researching who you're going to pitch is really important. I've pitched, oh boy, two people now, an angel group and one VC that I didn't know who I was pitching. And that's a really bad idea, because you could never know that you could be walking in and you just, ironically, we don't know, but the CEO of the competitor, or your competitor company is in the room, and you had no idea, and you're just like, bang, you just laid out your whole strategy, and now he knows. So you kind of gotta, that didn't happen to me, but I'm just using that as an example. You have to be very careful when you go into that kind of scenario, that you need to make sure who you're pitching. And then negotiating is really important. I don't watch the show. I don't condone anybody to watch TV, but you won't have time for it. Shark Tank, they call those guys sharks for a reason. Most investors, hopefully I don't eat this on later on, but most investors are total assholes. And a lot of them, and this is the sad scenario, a lot of them go to Stanford and then they get masters in finance, and then they go to a venture fund, right? And they become a junior partner, and then a partner, and then a director, and now they're fancy investors. And these guys have no clue how to run a company, have no idea, yet they're going to tell you how to run your company. And it's really unfortunate that it works out that way. And you really have to kind of battle with them, and you kind of have to be an expert in your field. And when they throw up something, another thing investors do is they will argue with you to the death that the sky is pink. They're blatantly wrong, but they will argue with you and argue and argue and argue, and it's a little hectic. So you need to really have your debate skills like up on par. Otherwise, they're just going to rip you apart, and you definitely don't want that. So negotiating with them is very difficult. I don't think it's the terms sheet part of it. I think it's the intro part where you're actually pitching it the first time. I think that's the most difficult part, because you really only get one opportunity to pitch them. If you get to the terms part, then you're doing pretty good, because you'll figure something out eventually. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to pitch investors. That's the first thing I need to tell everybody. Don't be afraid, because investors will never say no. They will never, ever, ever, ever say no. If they do, they're just stupid, or you're really stupid, and they're like, no way. And they don't want to do that because they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot, because what happens if you blow up 2 months later and they're like, hey, remember me? No, and your stock just went up like 3 times what it was when you pitched them. So they typically don't say no. So don't be afraid of that. Also, you can shop. You don't have to go to this one investor. The first investor you pitch, don't just get it out of your mind you're going to get any money from them at all. Just use it as an experience, because they're not going to fund you most likely. Because you'll realize in that pitch, like I did, for instance, like how much your pitch is lacking, and you really need to build on that. And again, constructive criticisms and bullshit criticisms, which I've had both in pitches. So I think that's really important. Folklore, huge. This thing about 51% control ownership. Everybody who tells me that has never released or leveraged equity in their life. And when you actually get an investor or another team member involved, instantly just lose control. I mean, not completely, but you lose control because those people have a controlling input, especially the investors. So that 51% thing, like, don't think about it. I'll be happy if I walked away from this company with 20%. And I mean, that's way less than 51, but it's a big animal. So you kind of have to, again, not be greedy about that. And it's BS. Advisors. There's this thing about Silicon Valley and starting a business. You need to have this big advisory board, robust team of experts, and this big team of a board of directors. That is so far from the truth, especially the board of directors. Usually the board of directors will just be like the founder, and then there'll be some investors. And the advisory board, somebody I look up to a lot, is kind of a mentor to me, a very, very smart guy. His name's David Barrett. He's the founder of Expensify, very successful. Anyways, he told me one time, it was really funny because I was kind of stressing about building an advisory board to go pitch. And he's like, dude, why do you want advisors? Why do you want somebody to come in and tell you stuff that you already know how to do better than, because you're an expert in your field? Yeah. And this guy's raised like millions of dollars, so obviously I'm listening to what he says. He's on, but anyways, so it is true. I mean, unless you really don't know what you're doing, maybe it's good to have an advisory board, maybe not. It just all depends, I guess, on the particular person. Negotiating suppliers. Any company you make, you're gonna have a supplier. Whether you're like doing cleaning services, or whether you're doing iPhone cases or something like that. And what I've learned is really, really important is strategic cornering. Maybe this only works in big business, but find, for instance, your competitors and who they're getting, if you make iPhone cases, who they're getting their plastic from, right? And don't go to them. Go to the people that used to supply your competitors, or the highest competitors of their plastic suppliers. The reason being is you'll kind of push them into a corner where you'll tell them, hey, look, these are our competitors, and we're going to sell 3 times as much as them. And for them, that's their market share, because those suppliers that are supplying plastic to your competitors, they're going to get that market share. So in their opinion, they're like, wow, that's a pretty good deal. So you kind of force them into a corner where you're like, hey, you don't got anybody else to go to. Those kind of negotiations, I think, are pretty helpful, as well as like leveraging, obviously, like price. I think that's an interesting thing, because it segues into the next thing I want to talk about, which is global suppliers. My first company, we outsourced for a very brief time overseas to Asia to have some parts be made, and there's a huge language barrier, but there's a huge business ethics barrier, huge barrier. It was very difficult, very stressful, and it took a really long time. And we've had to do it in this company on certain parts. And let me tell you what, the language has gotten better, but the business dealings, business flow, deal flow is way different. For instance, like here in America, you get free samples from everybody. They're like, here, try parts, and you get free samples. In Asia, don't work that way. They won't give nothing for free. And they call it a sample, which if you look up by definition. Anyway, so it's very difficult to deal with them in other continents, other cultures, things like that when you're negotiating. So kind of knowing their deal flow and the way that their business culture works beforehand is very helpful. Just don't get too stressed out about it. One other thing I think is really important to touch is media. Because you will be sort of negotiating with media. When you do interviews and things like that, you'll be speaking with media. The media has the ability to make or break you. And that's probably a lot of what's wrong with the world today is attributed to some of the media. But you have to be really careful with what you say to the media, because a lot of times they distort the truth and they misconstrue it so that they can get clickbait, where they can get more traffic, more visibility to that particular article. And it's actually really funny because I just tweeted to Elon Musk the other day about something that I thought was really, really funny. That Wall Street Journal posted something that a UC Berkeley professor, he had done a huge report and figured out that Elon Musk's Hyperloop cannot be built for $6 billion. It will cost $100 billion. And they posted it. Now, if you can think of anybody in the world who can do things cheaper than anyone else in the billions, like the first dude I think of is Elon Musk. Global payment system, multi-billion-dollar company. Automotive, multi-billion-dollar company. Space program, multi-billion-dollar company, did it way cheaper than NASA. Automotive did it way cheaper than only the 3 U.S. manufacturers. I thought, wow, that's really weird. They would actually post that and try to bring, discredit him. Like, this dude's incredibly proven. I even had, a UC Berkeley professor email me during our campaign and tell me, you can't do that, that can't be done. And so, the media has a tendency to very much misconstrue things. And when you're a startup, you want media as much as possible. Like, you're just desperate for media. You got to be really careful, because a lot of them will befriend you, and they're not your friends. They'll befriend you, and they're writing bad stuff. I've had my run-ins with bad media many times, and definitely need to watch out for that. So when you speak with them like you're speaking to a defense attorney who's trying to prove your ass. I don't know. Just be careful what you say. I think that's it. I know we didn't have a ton of time, so I just kind of tried to blow through everything really quick. Hopefully, it's kind of touched negotiations.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you very much.